All right, here we go. Welcome to the very first apologetics class for actual adults. I hope that you guys will keep your Cheeto dust off of your furniture since we're doing it on Zoom, because no teenager in my house has ever been able to keep from wiping their dusty fingers on my couch. My name is Stacie Forest, and I have been a youth pastor for about 30 years as far as working with young people, kids, youth, college age, all that stuff. I've been at Glory of Zion for 33 years. And I've been there longer than Chuck and Pam, so that gives me like this much credibility. This actual little class is being done through the Women's Houses of Zion. That is our one of our main women's ministry, and we're going to be doing a apologetics based class. I'm going to explain what all that is in a little bit. I hope you guys can all see me all right and hear me okay. Probably the easiest thing, just so you know, is to keep yourself on mute. If as we're going along, either tonight or at any point, if you guys have a question, there is a little chat thing. You'll have to figure out where it is on your computer or your phone, whatever you're looking on, that you can send me a message. You can actually chat with each other without me knowing. So if you want to make fun of me or say I'm doing something wrong, you're welcome to do that. I don't know if I'll know it. You can either send me a question or wave your arms vigorously and say, I didn't understand that concept, or I don't know what you're talking about, or when do you put in the eggs, is what Deborah's going to want to know. So we will get started here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and so you guys can see what is going on. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it. Can you guys see that I've changed my screen? Hopefully so. I'm going to switch up how I'm viewing you guys so I can see everybody at once. If you have any questions, you can let me know. All righty, guys. So this is what I call 315. Can you guys see that the screen is moving? Everybody do a thumbs up if you can see it. Yeah, thumbs up. All right, perfect. Okay, the screen moved. Okay, so about 5 years ago, about 6 years ago, actually, my son went off to college, and he was my second child to go off to college. And as he left, I thought, you know, I know the stuff that my kids know because I was usually their youth pastor or their children's pastor, and you know, a good parent and everything. And I know that he and my older daughter and then two more kids coming behind them didn't know everything that I realized they should know, because you know the fears were coming. Oh my gosh, kids are growing up, they're going off to school, and they're going to be hit with those questions, those things. Why do you believe in God? What is your Christianity? What is your worldview? And I decided that I wanted to be able to send my son and his friends, different ones, like interesting information, but I knew I couldn't send them like long articles or movies to watch or something. So I just started searching around, Googling, and wound up on this website that had these really short, interesting videos, and it was all about apologetics. And I knew a little bit about apologetics. It wasn't really a word that was stuck in my head, but I'd studied a little bit because obviously, you know, studying for being a youth pastor. But I really began to watch these videos and became really enthralled with this whole these concepts and this way of teaching the basics of what our Christian faith is. So what I did was I just kind of went crazy, started reading everything, watching everything, and I finally, my younger two daughters were still at home, and summer was coming, and I said, do you think your friends would be interested in me just doing like a summer Bible study about these topics? And they said, sure. So we'll call a couple friends. So they did. And so they called their friends, and about 15 kids showed up. And so we did it through the summer. And these were like top kids in the school. They were like super involved, like athletes and student council and stuff. So I was positive that the moment that summer ended, they were going to be too busy with school to keep to not want to keep coming, and they did. They said, we want to keep coming, let's figure this out. So we changed the day of the week, and we just kept figuring it out, and they just kept coming and coming and coming. And then that group, my next kid graduated, her friends went off, and then my youngest brought her friends in, and it just kept coming. So it was like a couple years worth of stuff with them. And then they all were about to leave, they were graduating. I thought, oh, I guess that's it, we've done it for a couple years. And my another friend from church said, hey, it was like June, she said, hey, can my sons come to your thing? I heard about your Bible study. Because hardly anybody, there was only my kid, no other kid, maybe one other kid from church. These were all kids that were coming that were from my friend's school, and they're friends. And I said, well, the Bible study is over, nobody came. Nobody's left, they all graduated. She says, well, I'll get some kids. So she just started calling people. I said, well, I'll be open, my house will be open at this time, if anybody shows up, I'll teach them. 20 kids showed up. And they stayed through that summer. And then some of them, like, went off to their schools, they couldn't keep coming after the summer. But I had about 15 or so kids that kept coming. So that went on for 3 years, and that went through this last summer. And then that group actually finally did graduate and kind of moved on and started going off to college, and they tried to keep going, but it was just too hard with school and everything. So that kind of ended. So when Luke started asking me about doing this, I said, what the heck? I've never really taught adults before. I can't make, passing gas jokes every 5 seconds, like you do with kids, but maybe they'll put up with me. So this is, you get the next phase of Stacie Forest teaching apologetics. So whoop whoop for you guys. We'll see what happens and if you guys stick around. But I love this topic. I love all of this, and I'm going to tell you why. So because I love art and I'm an artist, I came up with a logo immediately. And so I've had this logo and a name for the group. I call it 315. And the reason I call it 315 is from 1 Peter 3:15. Always be ready to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. This is like Apologetics 101, the main verse that they have. So this course, I guess, or this series of lessons that I'm going to do is what I call the basics. It's the basics of Christianity, the basics of what we believe, what we claim to believe as a faith. It has variances. I mean, that's why we have a million different denominations, because there's different ways of looking at these things. And I, as best I can, will point those out to you and say, well, this is what maybe I believe or what I've been taught, but here's the differences that I know about these things. And I welcome you guys to tell me what you see with that, and with, certain topics that we'll cover, and to challenge me, or because I try to be presenting it, and not always, depending on what it is, not always giving an exact, this is actually what you have to believe. Now, there are very clear things like Jesus, Son of God, kind of stuff that, is the basics of Christianity. But I will try to point out some variances. So the basics have to do with what we believe. This is about Christianity, why we believe it, and what to do with it. Pretty big deal, what to do with it. Hopefully you guys are seeing the screen move. I was teaching something the other night, and I got about 20 slides in, and they said, we're not seeing anything, but thumbs up. Are you guys seeing things move? Okay, here we go. All right, so if someone asks you what you believe, what might you tell them? You might say, well, I'm a Christian. I believe God exists. I believe the Bible is true. Jesus is cool. He's chill with me. We're tight. I mean, there's probably some very specific things that you might say. It may be kind of generalized, depending on, how they're asking you. But what we're going to be diving into is, what if someone asks you why you believe what you believe? How did you come by your beliefs? Make sure your sound is turned up, because I've got a little video for you. Here we go.
Now, is there anyone here who can tell me why most alligators are abnormally aggressive?
I know the answer to this question. Raise your hand.
Anybody? Anyone? Yes, sir, you, sir.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Your mama said Alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth and no toothbrush. Wow. Anybody else? Yes, I use it.
Alligators are aggressive because of an enlarged medulla oblongata. It's the sector of the brain which controls aggressive behavior.
That is correct. The medulla oblongata.
Mama
The
said,
medulla oblongata is where anger, jealousy, and aggression come from.
All right, you see that look on his face? That's a look a lot of us have had at that moment where we realize that our beliefs are being tested, our ideas of how the world works or our faith works is being tested. This guy in particular, he happens to be wrong about his understanding of this topic. This is a clip from Waterboy, a very, very funny movie. And this moment actually in the movie is extended even more because he begins to give more things that his mama has taught him, and he eventually gets so angry with the professor that he ends up tackling him, and it's a big, funny Adam Sandler kind of moment. But this moment, actually, we may not want to tackle somebody, well, maybe we do, but it actually is a good example, I think, of what is going on in our heads when we are faced with challenges to our faith or just trying to understand how a concept works. Most of us grew up, I think, knowing you guys, I think most of you guys grew up in a Christian home or came to accept the beliefs of the Christian faith maybe a little bit later in life, but you do live in America. You are, a lot of you are in the Bible Belt. You are in a culture that says things and teaches things that are coming from a biblical worldview on some level. But the idea that mama said, as Adam Sandler said, is not something we can get away with. It shouldn't be something we can get away with it when we're young, but definitely not when we're older. We've got to figure out what it is we believe. And at some point, I know you guys have wondered about certain things, topics, and if you've been taught whether something is actually true, you may have wondered, well, how do we even know that Jesus was raised from the dead? How do I know the Bible is true, not full of errors? Because, I mean, there are errors in our English translations that can be easily pointed out by somebody who wants to make you look foolish. Made up stories by only men, which can bother many of us. How do I really know God exists? Maybe we just all live in a snow globe and the galaxy's a snow globe. How do we know any of this stuff is actually true? And what is this basis? Now, I grew up in Christian home, Christian atmosphere, good teaching. The questions I had were not as involved, but they kind of, I accepted everything pretty well. I had a really good friend in high school that was like super smart, and she asked all kinds of really great questions, and she was a good Baptist girl, knew her Bible inside and out, and I was just astounded at the stuff she knew. We ended up going off to college and being roommates, and she came back from class one day and she said, in my class, my teacher said something about the that all humans are basically good. And I raised my hand and I said, no, they're not. Human beings are not basically good, they're basically evil. And I remember sitting there thinking, huh? What? How did they are? I thought the first part, humans are basically good, was right. And I had been raised in a Christian home, but I'd never had that concept. I'd never had to deal with that before. And the fact that she knew that it was different, she had a different biblical worldview, she had an answer for that, just astonished me. I didn't tell her how astonished I was. I made it sound like, I totally agreed with her, and I was just shocked with the professor too. But it was one of those college-y moments that happened that I thought, I probably ought to figure some of this stuff out. So it's okay for you guys to have questions, and that's why you're here. Obviously, you want to know some stuff. So these are common questions, the existence of God, who is this Jesus guy? What's the point of all this? And isn't God kind of mean? Common questions about Christian faith. We've had them for generations. Types of questions that believers, though, we do need to be prepared to answer, both for ourselves and for other people. One of the most noted verses in the Bible that instructs us as Christians to be how to respond to these questions is 1 Peter 3:15. I mentioned it before. Always be ready to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have. A very important verse. I suggest you open it up in your Bibles and underline it vigorously. But the context of this verse is important because it's a good verse to have, oh, you should be ready. But the context will kind of remind you of present day. First Peter was writing to writing to believers. They'd been dispersed all throughout around Turkey and what we call Turkey, and they were experiencing persecution for their faith. He was writing them that whole chapter, all those verses around it, not just that one verse, but are all talking about how to be courageous, how to be faithful in the face of suffering, in the face of people questioning their faith and who they are as believers, and their willingness to stand up for truth and to speak truth to the worldviews that were around them. He wants them to be able to give a reason. He's not telling them to hide. He's telling them you have to be able to give a reason for the hope that you have. I've done some teaching on socialism and trying to explain that concept to young people. And one of the biggest aspects of socialism that is very pervasive, not only in our country, but just in our world, communism and socialism, is that there's a Karl Marx quote that is that religion is the opiate of the masses. You've probably heard that. One of the most important aspects of socialism is to stop religion. It's considered an atheist, especially communism, considered an atheist idea, and they want to stop religion, not just Christianity, but just any kind of religion. And one of the main reasons is hope, because religion gives a person hope. It says there's something out there that I can strive for. My suffering may be bad right now, but I can trust in God. Or if everything is terrible for forever, I can at least trust that there is an end that is good for me, a heaven that I can get to, a hope that I have. But if you say that religion, but if you can say, well, you can't have religion, you must stop your religion, then you're trying to stop hope. And this is what Peter is telling us, is I want you to be able to give a reason for the hope that you have, for the end game, for what is out there for you. You need to be able to not just have it, I want you to have it, but you need to be able to explain it, be able to explain it. So Peter challenges us also to be ready. We have to be able to provide answers for what we believe. And the answers can be complex or they can be super simple. You can dive in hard with someone who you're talking to, or you can keep it a little bit on the easy side. I would suggest, if you ever are having conversations with people about their faith or about a particular aspect of Christianity or about religion, that you kind of go in slow, see where it's at. Don't try to hit them with every amazing bit of information that Stacie gives you or that you study on your own. You don't want to overwhelm them with the Stacie Forest knowledge, but you should always be ready. Just kidding. So this practice of giving a reason for our faith, for the hope that we have in Christ, is called apologetics. A great word to impress your friends, make you sound very cool. The term apologetics, for your note taking, is from the Greek word. Look, there it is on your screen, that Greek word apologia. Apologia, in the first century, it had to do with their practice of just giving a defense of an argument. It was a legal term, being able to give a well thought out defense or an argument. So Christian apologetics, you can have apologetics on, how to bake a cake, or how to do certain things, or what the reasons are behind why you drive the way you do. But Christian apologetics is defending the Christian faith. So it's just basically understanding that and being able to explain the evidence for the truth of Christianity. So what I'm trying to show in this little lesson series and in my talking about all this stuff is that Christianity is not a blind faith, which a lot of people accuse us as Christians of having just this blind faith. You're believing in, the long-haired, bearded man guy up in the sky, and you don't really know why or what's going on. It's unreasonable. And to be able to give a reasoned argument to support your faith is a key to not only you just having discussions with other people, but also for yourself. I came up with 3 reasons it's important to be an apologist: defend, define, and deal with doubts. Let's go to the first one. Defend. So the purpose of apologetics: prepare the way to prepare the way to faith by allowing an unbeliever to clearly see what Christianity teaches. It's actually you and someone else having a discussion and you being able to defend the basics of Christianity. Facts do not destroy faith. Sometimes we're afraid to dive in too deep. They ask a hard question we don't know the answer to immediately. It scares us too much. We go to bed that night. We're like, oh my goodness, Lord is good. I don't know how I'm going to be able to answer them. They're going to hate me. I must be stupid. How could I believe these things? I got to figure this out. So you need to like dig a little bit deeper and realize that there are facts out there. You're not being asked that question. It's not the first time that's ever been asked. And there's ways for you to look those things up. You don't have to know everything. It's okay to say, I'm going to look that up. But what you can be assured of is there are people from our wonderful Bible, like Paul, who used reasoned arguments to defend the faith. Stephen, he was about to be stoned. And if you read that passage in Acts of Stephen, he gives a very well thought out, as like the stones are like waiting to be coming at his head. He's giving a very well thought out and reasoned argument about his faith. That is a new faith. I mean, Jesus had just risen not too long before. And here he is giving this amazing defense of his faith in Jesus, right as the stones were about to be thrown. The Bereans are described by Paul as a group who he considered more honorable, because when Paul and Silas brought this new religion, these new ideas, these new concepts of to these people of who God was, who Jesus was, who Holy Spirit was and is, they thought about it and they looked it up in the scriptures themselves. They didn't just have an emotional response. They didn't take it, and not that it is okay for some people to have a quick response to Jesus, but this particular group were people who said, well, we're going to study this in the scriptures, and he considered that an honorable thing, which is good. Pat me on the back, because I have a lot of questions a lot of times, so I like to think that Paul thinks I'm cool too. And then there was that woman at the well who was asking Jesus some really intense questions. You know, this woman was someone who it looks like she was an outcast. She was not well thought of in her city, and yet she is asking some deep theological questions. Some of them, it seems that she was asking them because Jesus was kind of getting in deep, and so she was like changing directions on him as fast as she could. But she was asking some really good questions, and then when she got those questions answered, she ended up being able to go back and tell the whole village, and the first evangelist ends up leading people to salvation in Jesus, or understanding of who Jesus was. And then of course we have Mary the Magdalene, who was the first one who saw Jesus, the first witness. She goes to the disciples and tells them this fact: hey, I saw him, he's alive. And they didn't quite believe her. They had to go, and she's like, okay, fine, go check it out yourself. So they go and they realize that it's all true. So so questioning is okay. It's encouraged, as a matter of fact. Defending our faith, we don't have to hide from tough questions from ourselves or from others. Apologetics is about critical thinking. One of the most important things we could be developing right now is not only critical thinking for ourselves, but for those around us. I know a lot of you guys either have children, young children, you're around younger children, or teens, or you are, hey Chelsea, you're unmuted, or you are teaching young people, or you maybe have grandkids, or you're just around a bunch of people who have very strong opinions about things. But we need to be developing critical thinking skills. There's a whole lot of emotions going around these days, whole lot of young people with a whole lot of emotions who are living on those emotions and are being told that whatever pops into their head is okay. And adults and kids, I'm not trying to drag on young people, because I think they are going through, young people today are going through more confusion and craziness than has been put upon a young group in history, because of the amount of information that they have available to them, which is fantastic, but it's also a bit overwhelming. So we really need to help them think through and have these critical thinking skills, which means we have to develop them ourselves. So we know that we're supposed to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that's a part of the Shema, which is, you know, an Old Testament thing that that was written about. Again, Jesus said that's the most important commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. Actually, heart and mind are sort of the same thing, and it's about everything that we have. And there's a really great Bible Project video on the Shema that I would encourage you to watch. But when we seek to understand the Christian faith, communicating that to others, we're loving God with our mind, diving deeper into who He is, and being able to communicate that. We know if we can teach somebody something, it means we've learned it ourselves. So sometimes some of these things that we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks and months, you might try to find somebody who you could be like, okay, I'm now going to tell you what I think I learned from Stacie, or what we were discussing the night, just to see if you can repeat it and get it out and make sure that it is something that begins to get stuck in your head. I've had to do these lessons and some of this stuff a bunch of times. And even when I was preparing this over the weekend, I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Because I haven't read it or talked about it in a while. I just read this quote a little while ago. Nancy Pearcey, a great follow. She's got some great books. You might look her up on Facebook or online. She said, a religion that avoids the intellectual tasks and retreats to the therapeutic realm of personal relationships and feelings will not survive in today's spiritual battlefield. We have got to get out of our feelings, as wonderful as our emotions and our feelings are. Deborah and I were just discussing this a couple of days ago in regards to youth group stuff that she's helping kids to confront, is their overwhelming desire to just stay in their feelings and their emotions. We've got to realize that that's a battle that critical thinking is what we need to deal with that. So now define, that was defend. Let's talk about defining our faith. 65% of Americans, I'm not totally sure where this statistic comes from. I didn't just make it up. I heard it from a reliable source, but 65% of Americans consider themselves Christian. But that is not necessarily the same Christianity that everybody is following. It's not necessarily, it could be a lot of different worldviews. It could mean that, oh, I believe Jesus existed, so I'm a Christian. Or, but that could mean, oh, he's just a good teacher. It could just mean, oh, I have Christian values. I am a good person, so that makes me a Christian. It does not necessarily mean that they are living according to a biblical worldview, a worldview that is based on what the Bible teaches about who God is, who we are in relation to God and in relation to others, and how we are to approach our lives in our now and in our future, and all of those things combined. So so just because someone says there's a Christian, you guys know this very, very well, you guys are grown, but being able to define our faith is important, because only really, when you get down to all the numbers, really only about 10% of Americans, 10% actually fall under the category that you could actually call them living a biblical worldview. And we're going to discuss that exact term in a few weeks, what worldviews are. I love that topic. So this makes the people who have a biblical worldview, this 10% or less, and that includes in churches. They say within churches, the 20% who consider themselves, who actually probably have a worldview, really it's probably only 10% of those. Very small. You are a minority. We are a minority. Biblical worldview people are a minority. So let's say we're around a bunch of kids, like some Gen Zers, those who are born from about 2000 on. they are going to be struggling. They're struggling with some major issues right now. They have some of the top challenges that they're dealing with: mental health issues, which we're seeing even more in the last year, shame and emotional issues, porn use, loneliness, and a lack of biblical worldview. These are some very big, any one of those individually is a huge issue. And I guarantee it's not just the young people, but can you imagine being 10, 12 years old and dealing with these things? It's huge. It is happening. You imagine being 8 years old and dealing with these things. It is happening. We have got to be able to help their parents, help each other, help these kids, these young people, do whatever you can to help them. My sister in Colorado works with helping kids who have come out of who are aging out of foster care. She has some home charities. She got homes that she puts people up in. She helps them. She is tirelessly working, and she has taught me so much just listening to her talk about these kids and her research, and we kind of flow off each other, the research that we've done, just trying to help kids, which means actually physically grabbing them and helping them and carrying them to their next place to help deal with their wounds. The U.S. is now considered a post-Christian nation. It will probably not take long for any young person that you're around to realize that they hold a minority view on something as life-defining as their worldview. Claiming to be a Christian immediately places a young person in a posture that they're going to have to be defensive, because they're probably going to deal with persecution and suffering, and that is at the youngest age. Even down here in the good old Bible Belt, if you claim to be a Christian, you might get laughed at. You're definitely going to get questioned. We've got to help our young people deal with it, and by you guys taking this class, or even just watching some cool videos, or reading some books, or just talking with your friends and coming up with answers, you're going to help young people, not just ones in Christian households, but others, be able to have answers, and prayerfully we're trying to point them toward the answer, toward Jesus. So helping young people, helping other people, just human beings in general, define your faith is life altering. So there are top questions that young Christians, as they're leaving high school, this is some of the top questions that they are asking. Young people who have been raised in Christian homes, okay? These are their top questions. Is Jesus the only way? How do I know that? People are going to ask me that. Why does God allow suffering and evil? What about this homosexuality question? These are top questions that they're asking. We need to have answers for that, you guys. We need to be able to have a biblical answer, not just what the Bible says, but actually answering their questions. The homosexual question is huge. It's transgender issues, women issues. Nancy Pearcey actually is a great source for that. If you're having people that need answers, I really highly recommend her book or her information, her website. But those kind of questions are things you need to get an answer to. I'm just flat out going to point at you and tell you, get an answer, make sure you can answer at least those 3 questions, because those are the ones that young people have, and old people have, a lot of people have. And so the third D in my reasons for apologetics has to do with dealing with doubts. Apologetics takes on doubters. That could be other people, could be you, some doubts about yourself. It may not mean that you're throwing away the Christian faith, but the doubts that we have can alter things. The doubts about not just does God exist, and does he love me, and why is there suffering, but even things like something I'm going to discuss in a few weeks, egalitarianism, which has to do with men and women, the roles that the traditional church has tried to put men and, well, in particular women in, and how that can really screw up young people and old people and everybody in between. And those doubts need to have answers, and they need to have answers that make sense and that work, and that are biblical, not just tradition. But doubts in the Christian faith, they're not a bad thing. They can lead us to examine more deeply our own beliefs and help them to grow stronger. They can help us help other people, and maybe change some old false beliefs. Jesus was definitely an apologist. He loved having some arguments with some people. Maybe we don't define them as arguments with Jesus. Maybe they were just really cool, good discussions. He was super smart. But as you read the Gospels, you see Jesus. He's arguing or discussing strongly with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, his own disciples. Answering questions, refuting their misunderstandings, providing evidence. Sometimes it was like, here I am, here's your evidence. But his goal wasn't to win the battle, but it was to provide truth, understanding. And often he would just sort of let them sort of make the connection. You see it with Nicodemus. You see it with the woman at the well. You see him going, okay, I'm going to help you connect a few dots here. Then you're going to have to work through this yourself. And he helps them do that. He uses logic, reasoning, evidence, and he listens to them and allows them to talk, and then he answers those questions. Now, if you were in my Bible study right now, it would say on the screen, the first one to look up this verse gets a prize. I'm not going to do that to you guys because you would have to grab your Bible, look it up really fast, and stand up and start screaming. And I don't have any way to get you guys a candy bar, but that's what we normally would do. But if you want to look it up, this is our scripture for this evening. But now Thomas, one of the 12 from John 20, called the twin, yay, Thomas, a twin just like me, was not with them when Jesus came, when he was resurrected. You guys know this story. So the other disciples told him, hey, we've seen the Lord. It was really cool. But he said, yeah, right. Unless I see his hands, the marks of the nails, place my finger into the mark of the nails, place my hands into his side, I will never believe. This is a passage that you should study hard. It is an intense passage. I think the fact that he had the courage to say that, I actually admire Thomas a lot for this, and I don't think Jesus holds it against him. 8 days later, okay, listen, y'all. 8 days later, I'm gonna clap at you. 8 days later, that was a long time. His disciples were inside again. He was sitting around waiting for to be proven to him for 8 days, and he was sitting back going, yeah, I told you. He thought he was so right. But finally, Jesus did show up, and Thomas was with them when they were all together. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came. That must have been so cool. And stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said, which I think was basically Jesus' way of saying, okay, everybody, calm down. I'm here. Everybody's cool. Chill. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. Peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger right here. See my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe. Thomas answered him, my Lord and my God. Woohoo! That was cool. Jesus said, have you believed because you have seen me? Because blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. Oh, that's us. That's us. If we believe in Jesus, we have not seen him. Most likely, I don't think you guys see him directly. Maybe you had a vision, but I haven't yet. Blessed are those who have not seen him. Blessed. Everybody's blessed and yet have believed. All right. So here's some clues about Jesus' interaction, because I want you guys to have interactions with people, but let's do it the Jesus way, not the crazy we know so much and I'm going to just beat you over the head with it way. Okay. So what does Jesus not do in his interaction with Thomas? He doesn't make fun of him. This would have been hard for me. He doesn't call him out. He doesn't try to embarrass him. He doesn't call him stupid and review all the facts. Oh, hey, I told you I was going to rise from the dead. I told you I was coming back. What's the big deal, Thomas? Blah, blah, blah. And that's not what he did. Okay, sorry, I forgot I was not talking to kids. That's I'm talking to kids' voice. Okay, this is what he does do. He gives evidence. He is visible evidence, which is kind of cool. We don't really have that. We're going to have to kind of work through our evidence a little bit differently. But he does give Thomas a reason to believe. He doesn't just say, what's wrong with you, Thomas? He gives him a reason to believe. He gives him the evidence that he specifically asked for. He said, I need this to be shown to me. And that's what he got. That was very cool. So my point is, it's not a blind faith that we have. God gives testimony, evidence, and it's going to get a lot harder than this, than just, oh, Thomas got to see Jesus up close and personal. But some things that I will give you answers for are not necessarily perfect answers. Like, we do not know exactly how the earth was created. We have some pretty good guesses, but there's still a lot of debate about that for good reason. But we can say the heavens declare the glory of God, we can point people toward the glory of creation and other evidences, and that's what we're going to be doing. But the ultimate question that Jesus does ask is, who do you say that I am? And that's what we always do have to answer, but we also have to ask other people, who do you say Jesus is? It's okay to have all those other questions. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why didn't God do this at this time? Why did he say to kill all the little sheeps? And then at other times he said, oh, God bless all the little sheeps. You should be happy that they're still alive. Okay, those are two different verses. I could tell you about them. I'll tell you about them later. What are some of the most basic questions about Christianity that people are asking, that you guys might be asking? Does God exist? Jesus? What about the Bible, evil, suffering, that whole resurrection thing? Really? Do we believe that? There are a lot of people who claim to be Christians who don't even believe in the resurrection, but they still say, well, I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus existed. Well, resurrection, obviously, if you're paying attention, Paul says the most important part of all of it, the homosexuality, transgender, same-sex desire questions, or maybe just don't all religions just basically point to God anyway. So what is the big deal about the whole Jesus aspect of it? These are all pretty basic questions about Christianity. So here's some super, here's like one of the basics. Remember I told you the name of this study is called The Basics. Okay, here's basics number one. We're not going to go in too hard, but I'm just going to give you a little taste. Okay, so does God exist? So if you wanted to talk to somebody about God existing, just the ultimate big question, a God, is there a being of some sort bigger than us, bigger than this body, in some sort of spirit form out there, invisible form? Does God exist? Why is that considered like one of the most basic question? God either, so there seems like there's two different answers. There's either God does not exist or God does exist. And that one question right there is full of almost everything. It's the most basic. It is the meaning of life. Whether you believe God exists, a God, some form of God, some form of something out there, whether God exists or God does not exist, this is the meaning of life. Why are you saying that, Stacie? Well, I'm going to tell you. Okay, let's say we're on the part where it says God does not exist. Okay, if God does not exist, then here's what you might ask somebody if someone tells you that, or just in your own understanding. Where does meaning derive from? Where do we get meaning if there is no bigger presence? What do you use as your moral center? How do you decide what is right and wrong? Where did that come from? If there's a right and a wrong, what was the ultimate moment where something was named, oh, this is right, this is wrong? How can Hitler be called evil if we don't know what evil is? What defines what evil is? Or what gives you hope from deliverance, hope of deliverance from aging, from disease, from death? Do you have any kind of a hope? What do you hope in? These are all questions. If God does not exist, those are the questions that you can ask. Now, every one of those we're going to go into more depth in next week and possibly the week after. I'm just throwing some stuff out there to you to give you a little taste. All right, taste number two. Let's say we're saying God does exist. What kind of meaning of life do we have? If God does exist, there is some sort of meaning and hope. Usually, now we're talking about kind of a basic one God, kind of a thing. Now, if we go to Islam, a little bit different kind of teaching on that. It does involve hope and moral center and things like that. If we go into Hinduism or religions that have multiple layers of gods, or Buddhism or different religions that might say you have to return over and over again, the hope and the meanings of life are different, but there is something. They're basing it in something. So I'm just doing a big giant thing of God, a system of some sort, or not a system, a personage of some sort. So if you're saying God does exist, there's a possibility of for Christianity, we say, oh, we can come to know God. We can be loved by God or have a loving relationship with him. Other religions, it becomes about the rules. Well, if there's a God, he'll tell me what to do. He'll tell me if I obey these rules. Of course, Christianity does this sometimes too in our heads. But if I obey these rules, I will get to return in a better body or a better person or the next caste system up, or I'll if I obey these rules, I'll get to go to heaven and be with 40 virgins, or I'll get to just he'll like me more. If I commit suicide on his behalf, then God will be happy with me. There's different aspects of who you believe a person can believe God is, but his existence should give, usually does give meaning to the person's existence. If God exists, it makes a difference in mankind, in a person. It can be life-changing. It can be personal. Hopefully, as Christians, we refer to God as a personal God, where he has taken our sins, and we only have to have belief and faith in him, and we get that reward. But other religions have a more of a system that of rules to follow. But there are several basic apologetics arguments for the existence of God. We're going to hit each of these next week. I'm going to give you just a little taste of what they are. And then that way, if you guys want, if you want to take a screenshot, if you want to write them down, if you want to watch this later on, I'll send you the link when we do all that. Just get a little taste of them because they're very interesting. I got a couple that are more favorites and easier to explain than others, but we'll see what you guys think. So the first one I touched on a minute ago has to do with the moral argument about the existence of God. It has to do with right and wrong. Since we say that things are right or wrong, then we have to have some sort of standard or law that requires a standard giver or a lawgiver. Where does this idea of a center point where something can be right or wrong, where does that come from? Is that a proof of the existence of God? The next would be called the ontological argument, which makes me sound really smart. If you guys can memorize that one, you guys will be smart. Claims that because God is the kind of being who must exist, therefore he does exist, or a God does exist. That's a fun one. The cosmological argument is any kind of cosmological argument is an argument for God's existence based on the fact that there is a universe, a cosmos, and in the last about, I think it's like 60, 75 years or something like that, the Big Bang Theory began, and that moment, the Big Bang, is one of the greatest arguments, the cosmological argument that we have, because it says there was a beginning, a bang happened. Now, when a whole bunch of scientists who don't believe in God said that, all of a sudden they were like, oh, darn it, I think we just proved the Christian and Jewish and Muslim ideas about the existence of God. So they had to change it up a little bit to try to make us sound like we were still idiots. But a whole bunch of people were like, oh, see, we told you so. We told you there was a beginning. There has to be a beginning. Everything has a beginning. But the cosmological argument has to do with this pointing that there's something out there, what created it. And of course, now we know that it's an expanding universe, so there had to be a moment that something started to expand from. That's a super fun one to look up. And then the teleological argument is super cool too, because that has to do with design. Design implies there's a designer, whether it's weird little animals and fish that we can look around and go, wow, whoever came up with that? Or the way we ourselves are designed, our eyeball, our body parts, and how they all work together. There's a couple of parts I wish I didn't have, I'd like to get rid of, but that's me and God can work on that. But there is a designer, right? There's a designer that had to design this process for something to be as complex as our bodies are, our systems are, or the world is. There has to be a designer. There's mechanics involved, and anytime you see anything mechanical, you automatically think, oh, that didn't happen on accident. I mean, there had to be somebody that put that spiral into the sand or wrote a letter on the beach, you think, oh, somebody did that. You never think, oh, that just happened by chance. There's a designer involved. That's a fun one to talk about. So here's the cosmological argument. This is a great one. We're gonna talk about this more in depth next time. It's called the Kalam cosmological argument. This one actually is very old. It's an ancient argument made by a Muslim philosopher, but recently has become more primary, more out there in about the last 20 years by a Christian philosopher named Dr. William Lane Craig. Great guy to listen to on YouTube, but man, he's deep. But he actually has really brought the ideas of philosophy back into Christendom. Here's the Kalam cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. A little deductive reasoning. That is a very basic argument for the existence of God. That series of deductive reasoning phrases right there is an argument for the existence of a God. Now, doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. Doesn't have anything to do with Holy Spirit. It just has to do with the existence of God. That little grouping, that little phrase or deductive reasoning argument is something that maybe you might want to memorize it, but you might want to write it and put it on your mirror if you want to. But the idea of there being a beginning to the universe, whether it's the Big Bang or whatever you want to call it, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. What does not that has to do with beginning to exist? God, we say, did not begin to exist. There had to be something outside of time, outside of the beginnings, that does not need to have a beginning, just like the moral argument, to be able to give an existence. So there's a little cosmological argument for you. If you want to say, what in the world is Stacie teaching? There's a good one for you. All right, so next time, we're going to talk about the existence of God. I'm open to questions from you guys. You can email me, you can text me, you can raise your hand and yell at me, and we can discuss specific things. I have like a whole order of things that I way of talking about this stuff, but I love to get very specific questions. That if you guys had something, or maybe you heard something, or somebody asked you a weird question, feel free to shoot it to me and I will include it, or I'll just tell you if you don't want to include it in this. But that's what we're going to talk about next time. I want to give you guys some resources to look stuff up. If you're going to dive into this crazy world of apologetics with me, these are some cool videos and some people and some websites and things that you might be interested in. It's great for yourself. It's great for you to suggest for your kids, your teens, whoever. Look through them maybe and just see ones that you think, oh, my kid, he loves those kind of videos, or she loves a lot of them are little short things. But the 1 Minute Apologist is the one that first got me interested in apologetics. Got some great videos, especially the early ones. Go stream around and find like the ones that are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they got like 600 of them now that could go off into some crazy different topics. But go to some of the early ones. The Bible Project, my favorite, illustrating the Bible and concepts and books of the Bible. Really, really great stuff. I love it. Dr. William Lane Craig, his videos, he's got a group that makes interesting, we'll probably watch one next week, interesting argument videos. He's got one on the Kalam cosmological argument. He's got one on the moral argument, I think, and they're really cool animated short videos. And Dr. Stephen Meyer does some great stuff about design. He's a biologist, I believe. He's got a lot of degrees. He's super smart. He explains things really well, and he is very, very fun to listen to. Some books, anything by Lee Strobel is the best. C.S. Lewis, of course, Mere Christianity, except for that very last chapter, is great. Yeah, I'll be quoting C.S. Lewis a lot in the next couple of weeks. Podcast, highly, if you love podcasts, if you like to listen in your car, I really highly recommend them. Summit Ministries is in Colorado Springs, I think, has a great summer program and young people's program, but they have a little podcast that they have a couple of really good ones that are on socialism. So if you want me to send you those specifically, let me know. Really, really good explanations. Natasha Crane just started one. She has one that is for young people, like parents and people who are working with kids. Really, really good stuff from her. But if you have kids, especially, I know several of you are going to be watching this later on YouTube, and you guys have young kids, and that's why you wanted to watch this. Natasha Crane, good stuff. And of course, J. Warner Wallace. He used to be an investigative detective, an actual cop, and he dives into Christianity from an evidence or a detective perspective. And he's been doing it a long time. He's got some really good stuff. On Facebook, you can look up any of these apologetic stuff. There's tons of them. Any of these names, they all have Facebook sites or Twitter pages, but just following some of these pages will lead you to their books, or if they put out a podcast or a video or just some interesting articles. A lot of them have blogs, and this will take you to some of their blogs. Mary Jo Sharp is an apologist who has some really good writing about doubts and things and the doubts that she has had and how she works through them and has worked through them in her life. And I believe she's the one that she went from atheism to Christianity, but then even within Christianity, dealing with people in church and humans and Christians, she had to deal with went through a lot of struggles in her Christianity. So she's got, highly recommend all those books. I haven't necessarily read every single person's book or anything. I follow a lot of them online, but I just wanted to throw out a whole bunch of stuff at you guys. Obviously you won't be able to do all of them. YouTube's the easiest. But please, if we're going to dive into this, you guys might as well jump in with both feet, and let's see what we can all learn together. All right. So does anybody have any questions, any thoughts, anything that you're wanting us to talk about or look at or anything else? Wave your hand.
Okay. Yeah, that book, we looked it up, The Total Truth by Nancy Pearcey.
Yeah.
You recommend?
That's not the one. That's probably good, but the one I was talking about is called the body, thy something body.
Thy body. Yeah.
Okay, there was two. That was the other one. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that she talks about just the Christian homosexuality, transgenderism, all that stuff. She is also kind of in the fight right now. In the last couple of weeks, things have changed a lot in regards to women and actually being a woman, and the concepts that are on both sides in regards to like women's sports in particular, and locker rooms and all of the things, what defines being a woman. And she's diving in deep on that. She's already getting kicked off of sites, social media and stuff, so that she's definitely in the fight. But she's got some really good well thought out work that if you're dealing with that topic, I really highly recommend her stuff. You can follow her on Twitter, all that other stuff. Anybody have any questions? What are you showing me? Oh, that's the book. Yeah, that's the book. Yeah. Did this work for you guys? Does these concepts work? Yeah, you can please lie to me. Yeah.
I love it.
We like it. It's great.
Yes.
We got it on the TV screen, so you're big.
Oh my God.
Lighting too.
All right.
Really awesome.
Is there any particular topic or any reason that you guys joined into this? That and remember, we're still recording, so don't say anything to get anybody in trouble. But is there any particular reason that you guys wanted to dive into this, or was there a particular question you wanted me to deal with? Nothing. You just lots of information. I just need it all. Is that it?
Well, I think for me, one of the reasons, because you have worked with kids, young people, and they do have a lot of questions. And I mean, we know the Spirit of God and we understand that like in a spiritual way, but kids or even adults, you know, they do have questions. And so with the experience that you've had with the kids and interacting with them and knowing, you know, the things that they struggle with out there, I was interested in that part, because when you do evangelize, you do also talk about these things. It's not just everything by the Spirit.
Right. I have a couple of of what might be considered, I don't know, a little bit different views on that, because I was a children's pastor and youth pastor and all that for years, and because I was raised going to non-denominational churches, and then the church I was a youth pastor in, children's pastor, was a non-denominational church. I know that type of church, and that type of church, our charismatic churches tend to push a whole lot of spiritual gifts and Holy Spirit stuff, and what some people would consider sometimes a little bit flaky stuff. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it can look that way, and it doesn't always have a whole lot of substance. It does have substance, but it doesn't, we tend to not talk about substance. And the friend that I mentioned from high school, she was good Baptist girl. She and a couple other friends that I hung out with were really good, solid Baptist people. And God bless them, they know their Bibles. She knew the word inside and out. And I was shocked. I'd been in church all my life, or most of it. I didn't know the Bible verses she knew. I didn't know all that stuff because I'd gone to churches that did not teach in a systematic way that you get when you go to denominational churches, where they say, this is where you start, and when you learn this, then you learn this, and then after you learn the story about Jonah, then you get into middle school and you learn a little bit more about why Jonah did what he did, and then when you get into high school, you learn some of the craziness that was going on with other things with Jonah, and it builds on each other. I just knew, Jonah, Daniel, Jesus. I knew some stuff, but I didn't have a very good, strong foundation. And so then all of a sudden I became the children's pastor, and I had to figure out what we were supposed to be teaching. And there was nobody told me anything. We were just like this tiny little church, and everybody was just kind of figuring it out. And I was kind of the first real children's pastor they had. It had just been Linda and Pam or Deborah, whoever these other people were, the old Deborah, that used to go there, and they were just like, just figure it out, is the way I felt. So I started digging for curriculum, and I started digging for a system. I liked a nice system, and I provided curriculum to people, and I wanted it to build, because I realized that we had to have this foundation, but it had to be super systematic, because the kids otherwise. I remember one person, they told me, well, we asked the kids what they wanted to learn. They were the new teachers that year. We asked them what they wanted to study and what they wanted us to teach. So they told us, and I was like, they're like 5 years old. Why are you asking them what they want to do? That's not how this works. You tell them. So we I believe in a very systematic way of teaching, and it's a lot harder in non-denominational or charismatic churches to do that. We tend to push Holy Spirit stuff. We talk about hearing from God. We talk about visions. I believe in all that. Let's be clear. Don't anybody kicking me out. I believe in all that stuff, but I believe that if you're having a vision and it's about pizza and you're not and you're thinking that's from God, and it's really because you ate weird pizza, and you can't back some of that stuff up in the Word, then you need to quit walking around saying God said, because we say a whole lot of God said, and we can't really back any of it up. And you guys, most of you guys are adults. You've been with the Lord for a long time. If you said to me, God told you, pretty much all of you guys, I would trust you to be the truth. But a couple of you, I might say, yeah, you might want to take a nap and rethink that. Eat a different pizza next time. I might not say it to your face, but I might think it. So you guys, we need to make sure that we're teaching our young people, teaching our kids, even telling ourselves, you know what, just because I've been doing this for 100 years does not mean I know everything. Saying the words God said is a big deal. And just because everybody you're around says it all the time does not mean it actually is happening. So we need to make it a more serious thing. We need to say, if you're going to say God said, I want you to be able to back it up. I want you to be able to put a little more oomph behind it than just, I believe God's going to say stuff. I thought it, and I'm going to say it. I'm not trying to step on any toes, but that's the way I talk to the young people that I'm around. I want them to be in the Word. I want them to spend time in prayer. I want them to praise and worship. And if they're not doing those things, then when they say God said, I'm going to say, go back and do those things again. And then we're going to talk. Oh, Chelsea, look at you showing off. Chelsea does love the Word. So anyway, so that's me. Thank you for getting me on a soapbox, Rebecca. Not a good idea. Those were not in my notes.
Yeah, you know what? This is really amazing because I think that, and you mentioned the young people, this is very, very important for them to understand how to defend their faith. This is not just only for us, but, you know, and not only just to share with the young people, but for the young people, for the college kids, especially, to be able to understand what is it that they believe. And, you know, and to share, you know, very, not only just spiritually, but logically. So I think it's very, and make it credible, you know, otherwise we're just going to be looking like some strange people off the side of the road.
Stranger than we already look, right? Yep. One of the main ways that people came to know Jesus was because he did miracles, because he touched them and they were healed and they believed. That's very important. And I am definitely pushing that. Ask Holy Spirit to give you the gifts of healing and miracles and knowledge and all this other stuff. Fill us with your spirit every day. But we also need to be able to have evidence, use logical, critical thinking, and be able to answer people's questions and answer our own questions. So yeah, we got to have all those persons of the Lord, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, working through us and in us all the time, you guys. Man, I love you guys. This is fun. I wish we all were actually together, like in a house. They would be a lot of fun. We'd be eating snacks at Kathleen's house and trying not to spill. But probably by now, if it was the youth group that was all over, 3 of you would have already gotten up and gone to the bathroom, come back kind of sporadically. And one of you would have been on your phone texting another one across the room. So I appreciate you guys not showing me that you were doing this. I'm quite sure you were doing that though. All right, so what the plan is, I'm just gonna do this every week. And as long as you guys keep showing up, I might end up taking a week off. I will let you know, maybe in like 3 or 4 weeks, we might do 3 on, 1 off. I'll kind of let you know as we get going, but even if you can't show up, we'll record it and then you can catch it later. What I'll do is, I think I'm gonna put them up on YouTube. I will send you guys the link as soon as it's up. It'll be like a private link as far as like, it's not going to be open to the public. You have to have the link to actually get there. But if you want to give it to somebody else, that's fine. It's just that it's not going to be like a public thing. I think that's what I'm doing. We're going to make sure I can remember how to do all that stuff. So is that cool with everybody?
Yep.
All right. Well,
Works with me.
All right. I'm so glad to see you guys. If you guys don't have any questions, I guess we're done. I have to go eat dinner.
Thank you. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, love you guys. I'll see you next.
Thank you, Miss Stacie.
Let me know if you have anything. Send me a text or an email or whatever, and tell me that I'm great, because I'm very,
You're great.
I'm somebody who suffers a lot from lack of confidence. No, that is not true at all.
Yeah.
That's all I need is more confidence. All right, guys, love you. I will see you next week. Talk to you later. I'll send you the link later.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.